the other day, 2 days ago, I did a video on Star Citizen because this is going to be shocking to you. Star Citizen has raised a lot of money. I know. Crazy. They are now officially over the $900 million mark. Okay. And you can track this yourself. You can see it yourself. They are now at 916 million. When I filmed that video, it was at 901 million. Let that settle in. Let that settle in, okay? 6.1 million total citizens, and you can see their day-to-day revenue. Yesterday, they brought in a little over about $2.5 million. The day before that, they brought in 3.3 million. So the day I made my video, they made 3.3 million. Oops. And plenty more, okay? I mean, they had a rough, what would this be? So if this was Sunday, well, the 30th? Yeah, so this was Sunday, Saturday, Friday. Thursday was a rough day. They only made 2.2 million. Only 2.2 million. Oops. So we talked about this. And in the video, I tried to be as fair as I could because I've actually played a good amount of Star Citizen in my day. But whenever I do these videos, and this is important for fans of Star Citizen to remember, these videos that I'm making are for my audience. My audience, they're not people who are playing a lot of Star Citizen, okay? So I understand that for Star Citizen fans, this is like a very basic overview. Absolutely true, and it's meant to be that way. Because most people, all they've ever heard about Star Citizen is how toxic and overpriced it is. They've heard the memes of scam citizen and stuff like that. And I'm not really interested in that. And I tried to debunk some of those claims in this video because I personally don't think it's fair to call this a scam. I think it's pretty clear what you're getting when they offer it to you and they take your money for it. That doesn't mean it's good or a good idea to purchase it, but I think the term scam doesn't necessarily apply because scam implies a certain level of deception and things, which I haven't seen here, at least with this game, because they're very careful with how they phrase things. You'll notice they're very careful with how they phrase things when they say you're buying this and you get the 10-year insurance once the game leaves testing and leaves. Like, they're very precise. So I don't think scam is technically the accurate term. But all this to say, I made this video and there's no doubt been a lot of impassioned responses from Star Citizen fans, which I greatly appreciate, including this one from FLFL N5X, who typed all of this up responding to the video. And for one, can I just say, mad props. The fact that anybody would take the time to respond in that much detail to my ramblings, greatly appreciate it. Humbled, okay? But I wanted to look at this because there are some interesting counters, and you know, if I got something wrong, I would love to know if I'm wrong. And there's going to be a couple of things in here that are interesting because I did peruse these responses, and it is interesting. But in general, what you will find, and I mentioned this in the video, is that a lot of the people who have played a lot of Star Citizen, they are very, very, I think sensitive sounds bad, but they're very defensive about the game. So when people come out and are critical of it, they do feel the need to play defense for it. But at the same time, they will be very critical of RSI and CIG in general as well. RSI is Robert Space Industries and CIG is the developer Cloud Imperium Games. But I think that the reason this is going to be interesting is because the people who have played a lot of Star Citizen and have been in this universe for a while, they've become accustomed and desensitized to a lot of the stuff that happens within this universe that are just frankly totally unacceptable in any other segment of the industry, okay? Which is the reason I'm bringing it up. And the reason why I'm discussing it in my video is because I understand that for people playing the game, they're like, no, this ship is only for orgs. That's why it costs $1,000. So it would be unreasonable for a regular player to get it. And it's, you know, honestly, similar pricing models have been explored by Activision and EA and all of that. It's like, okay, I hear you. They are still not doing $1,000 ships though. Like, they're just not. Even these other games, like we looked at the Where Winds Meet, they have a cosmetic ship thing that you can get that is $40,000. At least that's the headline. the way you get it is by doing a ton of pulls and getting crafting materials to craft the ship. So even that is a bunch of small purchases. What Star Citizen does that's so viral and that gets so much attention is that they have ships that cost thousands of dollars, and they have a gray market where you can buy accounts from people that have spent thousands, and these accounts go for tens of thousands of dollars. That is just something that you don't really see in the broader gaming industry. But let's see this. To specifically look at each of these, let's see. However, that's all the more reason I think things should be pointed out, corrected here for accuracy and honesty. At 740, I referred to something here. Let's look at what he is responding to, okay? It is legitimately really cool and does work quite well. As you can see, I'm jumping with my warp drive right now, so you can travel across the system super quickly, and we'll see how it just does it super seamlessly as I approach my arrival point. I have a not super great warp drive because this is a starter ship, because I don't want to spend thousands of dollars in this game. More on that in a second, because yes, you can do that and many people do. So we'll just have to sit and wait like losers while we warp our way over there. And I think it's gonna be a long time. Shout out Jacob for the edit. Brings me around again to find I'm not the man they think I am at home. Oh no. I'm a rocket man. Rocket man. Dude, I breathe so heavy. Out his fuse out here. Hello. Am I okay? Here we come. There you go. That's how quick it was. Super. So you can't actually see it yet. When I swapped cameras, it pops in. You can't see the like space station yet. Super fast. But it's not there. Cool, and then I swept back. Just, like, then it's back. It loaded in. That is legitimately awesome. I appreciate that we can do it with like no load screens. That's genuinely like awesome and like really badass when other games require it. Does just take an adjustment in mindset, because this is a seamless universe, and you can do some crazy stuff. Crazy guy. That was Jacob's sound effect, by the way. I forgot to slow down. Forgot to slow down, so I crashed. After all that, I crashed. So yeah, I did forget to slow down. He counters this, so I'm referring to ships that can go faster or slower depending on how much money you spend. Specifically, there are different tiers of ships and types of ships, styles of ships. There's some that are meant to be cargo transport, some that are mining ships, some that are like fighter jets, basically. There's a bunch of different types of ships that you can spend money on, or you can grind for in game, but there's different tiers. And then ships can also be upgraded and get different parts swapped in and out, which can also make them go faster. What he said is, I think I understand what you're saying here, but it almost sounds as if you're saying that starter ships are necessarily slower, or that you need to pay money to go faster. For the record, in case someone doesn't or hasn't played Star Citizen, is watching and reading, neither statement is true. Faster quantum drives are cheaply purchasable as in-game shops, and bigger ships are not faster. Yet to be clear, the big ones, as you expect, tend to be a little bit slower. But I'm not referring to like getting the Idris to jump faster. I'm referring to like the ships that are specifically meant to be faster. The starter ships tend to be fairly slow and have very little, if any, cargo capacity. Like maybe one or two large crates, like that's it. Anyway, continuing. Additionally, you mentioned this later, but all ships are attainable in game, save some ships which have just released, or those for which CIG is still figuring out a reasonable way to put in the game, like the Idris, since obviously buying a military frigate at a Toyota dealership is kind of ridiculous. This is because like a lot of the places where you can buy ships in the game, in game, are sort of like car dealerships for spaceships, and so having a big military carrier basically wouldn't make sense, which I get. I mean, it's a video game, so I think you could do it if you wanted to, but they're trying to find ways of making that more immersive. If you spend the actual money on it, you can just get it added to your account and it's fine. But yeah, that is fair to bring up. Yes, all ships are attainable in the game, but again, for most of them you have to grind money to get it in the game. And those ships that you grinded for with in-game currency, to buy with in-game currency as opposed to real world dollars, when they do server wipes and progress wipes, you lose that ship. and all of the money you grinded for. So you can grind for it. You can. But you will lose it eventually. If you pay real money for it, you don't lose it. But if you grind for it with in-game currency, you can. People will counter this and be like, well, Luke, eventually when they stop doing server upgrades and stuff, you won't lose it when your progress is wiped. And that is like, okay, that's what they say, but that's not the reality we're living in right now, you know? So like, when that happens, talk to me. That's basically what I say to that. Anyway, continuing. So this specifically, this next one is, he basically says that he thinks this guy died. What he's talking about is the part of the video where I go on the store and I find an account on this gray market that is available for $25,000, and it has a bajillion ships on it. It's available. It has all of these things within it. Somebody played the crap out of this game to build this account. I would love to know why they're selling it. Like, what happened that they need to get rid of it? I'm so curious because they played this so much, dude. That's crazy. This is an account, just to be clear, that like a solid decade worth of grinding was put into, and thousands upon thousands upon thousands of dollars were spent on this account. And it's available for sale through this gray market for $25,000. And so what he was saying is that he thinks his take is this guy died and his account is being sold by his family or something. Sad stuff, but it happens, especially since Star Citizen players tend to be pretty old compared to those of other gaming communities. And that is, it's possible. What's crazy, my initial thought was like, what type of guy is going to give his family members like the login for his account and tell them to sell his account when he passes away? Like, who's going to do that? But then I paused and I was like, bro, if I had an account in a video game that was worth, allegedly, $25,000, I would probably do exactly that. You know, like I would probably tell my family to sell it when I pass away. I won't need it. Get 25 grand, pay for my funeral that way. So initially I was like, no way. But then I paused. I was like, no, if you could get 25 grand, yeah, I would definitely tell people that. So it's very possible. The other thing, maybe it's hackers, maybe it's people doing exploits to get assets and then they're flipping them. Maybe this whole gray market, you know, this particular one's a scam. I don't know. I know they have been trying to stamp out the gray market resellers and vendors. That is true. They don't like it because, as you'd expect, if you spend $25,000 on an account and it turns out the account was stolen or hacked or something, you know, they used a phishing exploit, got some dude's login, stole the account from him, and now they're selling it for 25 grand when he didn't want it to be sold. That's a problem. And they can't control that if gray markets exist, which is why almost every game I can think of does not allow you to sell accounts. You can't do that. And if you do, they shut the account down. You know, so I don't think that, you know, I don't know if I would ever buy, well, I do know I would never buy an account online to skip grinding anything, but that is a thing that happens in Star Citizen. Let's see this next one, 1435. Let's see what I was talking about here. 1435. Let's see. What is this counter to? At the end of the day, everything is about the ships. That's what everything is tied back to. It's a sci-fi game after all. I mean, that's kind of what you would expect, right? I mean, it's not really that big of a shocker to me. But it's important to note that most people probably get most of their ships with in-game currency that they gain by like completing activities or missions. You can see I can file an insurance claim on that ship I just crashed. I can pay an expedited fee and that'll speed up the time. And now I just kind of sit back and chill while I wait for the ship to be delivered. Or I could take delivery of another ship I have on this account. But in this case, I'll just wait for... So, and also here, just to point out, because this will be important later, you can see this one, the cargo listed is 8 on the Intrepid, and then on this one, it's 3. The big ships, one of the reasons why you can excel much faster if you have money to spend is because you can literally just deliver more cargo. So if you get a bigger ship, you can move more goods and sell more stuff on bigger like delivery missions and stuff, and that will help you excel even faster, you know? So it's not always just about speed, it's also about that. But what he says is, I think this used to be more true than it currently is. I think that this is specifically when I said that most of it is about the ships, and then it's also about grinding for money to get those ships. But he says it becomes less true patch after patch. It may be enlightening to check the player trade market on UX Corp. Players trade all sorts of stuff for large amounts of in-game currency, including armor sets and weapons, the most valuable of which can go for medium to large ship prices. However, it is true that oftentimes ships are the factors which enable or disable access to some pieces of content. So I won't dispute that they are more central to the game than any single other thing. Okay, so they're more affordable than they used to be, but they are still kind of the centerpiece. And again, that's why this whole discussion is kind of important, because if the game centers around ships and the ships are being sold for crazy extortionate prices, that is a problem, you know? That's a problem. Let's see, 1515, he says, again, I'm glad that you're mentioning attainability. This was, again, I'm about to say it, I'll just let it play. Intrepid because it's cooler. But the important thing to understand is that ships that are gained by in-game currency will actually be wiped. They regularly do server wipes and resets. Like maybe it's once a year, maybe it's once every 3 months. It's all over the place, just depending on what they need for development when they're working on the game. But when they do a server wipe, everything is removed. So you lose access to the ship. You don't have it anymore unless you paid for it with real world money, in which case you can get access to it again after the server wipe. So while you will hear people who play the game say, well, no. You don't have to spend real world money on the ships. You can just get it in game. Yes, that's true, but it will regularly be wiped and all of that grinding will be reset to zero. It's also important to note that most of the people that you talk to and that say you don't have to spend money on ships, if you ask them how much money they've spent on the game, the answer is usually in the realm of hundreds or thousands, or sometimes hundreds of thousands. I met one guy who had spent tens of thousands of dollars on the game already, and he was very, very like open about it, which I respect. You know, it's your money, spend it how you want. But like the whales in this game go hard. Okay, they really go hard. Now, this is very, very true. I'm getting Luke overload right now, for real, dude. So the thing is, I always find it funny how the people who are the most ardent defenders of Star Citizen tend to also be some of the people who have spent the most money on it. Shouldn't be a shocker, frankly. But beyond that, they also are the ones that stress you don't need to spend money to have a good time. You don't need to spend a lot of money to enjoy Star Citizen. But when you ask them how much money they've spent, almost always it is a lot of money by pretty much every metric. I say almost every time it's a lot of money, because I want to say, I'm sure there's people out there who have a great time and have only ever spent $45 to get the entry starter ship. But every person I've ever spoken to, whether it's in-game or YouTubers and streamers or whatever, when I've spoken to people who are really into Star Citizen, their accounts are always in the spending range of $500 to like $10,000. A lot of them have been playing it for a decade. They've put a lot of time and money into it, and that's a big component of it. He says in response to this, and again, I'm glad you're mentioning attainability in game, but I think this statement on wipes needs to be tempered a bit. Firstly, wipes do not happen on a monthly basis or even a yearly basis. CIG has stated before that they do not want to wipe unless they have a very good reason to, which essentially means testing large economy changes, which we probably will not get for quite some time, maybe late next year at the earliest if I was really coping, and that's me praying for economy changes soon. And it's already been some time since the last wipe. Real quick, when was the last server wipe? Oh, it was 4.0. They say around Christmas of last year. 3.24 to 4.0. Okay. So that was about a year ago was the last big wipe. When I started playing the game, whatever that was, like 3-4 years, I don't know how long ago it was. When I started playing the game, there were multiple wipes within, I think it was a 9-month period. I don't know. I'd have to look back at the exact timelines, but it felt frequent. It felt more frequent than it should. Even if it's a once a year thing, it still is tough to like grind for an entire year and then everything you have is gone. Server wipes though are something that happens a lot in live service games, period. Like, it's just a regular thing. So I'm not necessarily saying server wipes are a problem. Again, the thing is, it doesn't reset everybody's progress, because if you spent real money, you get to bypass the progress wipe. If you were playing the game just regularly, you don't get to keep your ships. You have to start from scratch, but the people who spent money don't have to start from scratch, you know? And I think that that's my frustration with it, is, again, like, Star Citizen, it's not really pay to win, because what does win even mean in a game like that? But in the case of a game like this, where it's about just doing bigger, better, cooler things, you certainly can excel much faster and do way better if you don't lose all your crap once a year, or even once every other year, or whatever it is. There's a huge advantage to not losing your stuff, you know, specifically your ships. You know, it's still not great. And I understand they've communicated they only want to do it as like the last possible option, but the point is, it still happens. Do I enjoy the game? I enjoy a lot about the game. I do not enjoy the pricing model or the game's economy or any, like, I have lots of problems. This is why I find Star Citizen so fascinating, is because it's such a duality, you know. There's the really cool aspects where they have some genuinely amazing technology that other games could only dream of having. The persistent entity streaming, where, like, literally, if you drop a water bottle in the game on a planet in a cave and then fly your ship to another planet, don't log in for a month, you could come back to that same cave and find the water bottle there, so long as nobody else has taken the water bottle or done anything with it. That's what their tech allows them to do, which is genuinely badass. That is cool. But then they come along and they sell you a ship for $850. And I'm like, what are we doing? You know, and it's why, like, they can't get out of their own way, which is going to be the fascinating thing with Star Citizen, is that they say they want to break into the mainstream. They want, for gamers like you and me who don't tend to play, like, we don't play this game, we tend to play like standard AAA releases for 60, 70 bucks. Like, that's what we play. They want to break into our community because there's a lot more of us than are playing Star Citizen or have ever played Star Citizen. But I don't think they can do that with this pricing model. But I don't think they will ever get rid of the pricing model. And I think they're going to try to break into it. They'll go to, like, the Game Awards and do a trailer or something, and then people will look into it, because the average gamer has no idea what Star Citizen even is. They might have heard rumblings about the game that's raised money, but, like, you know, beyond that, I just don't think there's a lot of awareness of it, but that's going to change. They continue. Okay, secondly, in its current state, ships in-game are extremely cheap. Okay, in its current state, okay. As for any given patch, certain activities, typically new ones that CIG wants to test, it seems, have vastly inflated payouts, because they're using players to play test it, basically. Currently, I do not think that wipes are a considerable factor for most people when deciding whether to buy in-game or for real money. And okay, I mean, I think surveys could be interesting. I'm sure they have some tech internally that would show it, but I do think that it is a problem. Wave over on Twitch says, that's how gacha companies work, though. They create a problem, sell you the solution. I have 15 years in the gacha industry. Star Citizen is doing that intentionally to force more people to spend money. It's a market strategy. Well, I mean, even if this individual says that he, in his personal opinion, I do not think that wipes are a considerable factor for most people when deciding whether to buy in-game or for real money. It's still a factor. Whether it's the main factor or not, it still is an advantage you get to spending real money versus grinding. And that's, again, something that creates a lot of instability. There is an incentive to spend real money on the ships as opposed to just grinding for it. Beyond just surviving the wipes, it's also just a matter of time. Like, some people don't want to grind for days, weeks, months. I always get different estimates. Some people just don't want to do that in order to get a ship. They just want to have the ship, you know? So there's an advantage to it. As an aside, though, I should also mention that there is currently still a glitch where you can lose an in-game bought ships between patches, but CIG is currently working on this, and it's at least somewhat better than it used to be, not to mention there is a reliable workaround. So there is currently still, so it's been there for a while, a glitch where you lose in-game bought ships between patches. So even like outside of wipes, you can just randomly lose your ships that you've grinded for. It is not done yet, to be fair. I know that might be surprising to you. The game is not finished yet. But that is a problem. That being said, however, I do personally find it slightly suspicious of how long it's taken for this glitch to be fixed, but that's probably a separate conversation altogether, so I'm not going to get into it. So even this guy who's played a lot of Star Citizen is saying and suggesting, I find it slightly suspicious how long it's taken for the glitch to be fixed, suggesting that they are not fixing it, or it's at the very least a low priority fix for them, because it benefits them. Because if they fix it, all of a sudden there's one less reason to spend real money on the ship, you know? Because right now, if people are like, oh, I'll just grind for the ship, but you're like, oh, but I'll lose it at server wipes, and there's a bug right now where randomly I could lose the ship between updates. Guess I'll just spend real money for it. Like that, the fact that that's even a suspicion because it's been in the game for a while. And I vaguely remember something about this from one of the videos I made on the game a while back. And that video I think was like a year and a half ago. And if that's the case, that this bug has been in the game for a year and a half and it still freaking has these problems, I would also be, in his words, slightly suspicious. Slightly suspicious, to say the very least. That's crazy, dude. That's crazy. But he continues in the same vein. This is also in response to something else that I mentioned. This was the bit right here. Ask them how much money they've spent on the game. Oh, asking specifically how much money people have spent. They've always spent a lot of money. This sounds like it's a lot, but I think if you asked any player of a live service game, which has been around for a decently long time, how much money they've spent on it, it's probably also quite a bit. I think if you asked a reasonably dedicated Destiny player how much they've spent on Destiny since Destiny 1, it'd be upwards of $300 to $500 just for DLCs in the games, not including any Eververse purchases. Likewise, I've spent many hundreds of dollars on Warframe just plainly because of how long I've been playing it. Still, it is true that there's no way to spend many thousands of dollars on Warframe or Destiny realistically, so I agree that there may be something to be said about the lack of upper limit on Star Citizen spending. Well, in gacha games, as I'm sure Wave is willing to discuss, the upper spending is where like most of the money comes from. The whales that are willing to spend tens of thousands of dollars, as opposed to the standard player who might spend, as he's suggesting, $300 to $500 over a decade. The whales are spending 10 to 20,000 in that time, you know, or even more. Like, again, we looked at the example of Where Winds Meet, which is also free to play and just cosmetics. And there's already a dude who has grinded enough and bought enough of the things to get crafting materials in order to get a roughly $40,000 ship is what they estimate it would cost to get it. So there's people, and that game's been out for like a month, you know, or 2-3 weeks or something. Certainly there will always be big whales who spend tons of money and there's no ceiling on their spending. And these companies have a vested interest in never capping that. Like, there's been discussions, I believe, out of Europe for regulators to come in and put a cap on spending. So like in one game, you cannot spend more than $1,000 in microtransactions before a cap hits. I think that would be good for the industry and would save a lot of people a lot of money, but I don't think they'll ever, you know, actually do that, frankly. Jordan says, I've spent around $600 on League of Legends since at least 2016. Well, let me be clear. If you're an adult who has disposable income, you can spend it on whatever you want. I'm not saying like it's immoral to spend money on your hobby, okay? If your hobby is Star Citizen and you want to spend money on it, cool. If you are into golf and you want to buy those like Tiger Woods Taylor, my brother was telling me about them, tailor-made irons. I don't remember exactly how much they are, but they're expensive. Shocker, golf stuff is expensive. I don't know. It's like $200 for one club. This I think is it. Yeah, just this one club is $220. Clubs, I want like a full kit. Can you complete sets? There we go. So like if you're really into golf and you spend $1,200 on one of these sets of clubs, you know, if you spend all that money and that's your hobby and that's where you get enjoyment and pleasure, props. Okay, do what you want to do. You know, you can spend your money however you want. What I'm specifically talking about in this video and in the other videos I've done is that I think if you're trying to go quote unquote mainstream, there are certain things you can do and certain things you cannot do. And some of the stuff that they want to do with pricing, I do not think plays within the more mainstream gaming community. Like, and part of that is just the sticker shock for sure, because he's right. There's plenty of other games that are mainstream that have spent or have raised and taken in billions of dollars through microtransactions. The difference, I think, is that they're doing that through like a $20 cosmetic. They're doing that through a $5 cosmetic, a $10 battle pass here and there. Like, that's how they're doing it. They're not doing it through $850 ships or $1,000 ships or a gray market where you can spend tens of thousands of dollars. They're just not. So the big price tag, individual price tag, is I think part of the reason the perception around Star Citizen is what it is. I think if they were smaller price tags, it would go over better. The other piece is that just flatly, it is a gameplay affecting macro transaction. You get a ship that is capable of doing things the cheaper ships or the ships that you just start with, they can't do. You get a bigger ship, you can deliver more cargo. That is something you get that you don't get if you were not willing to spend more money. You can grind for it eventually, sure, but it can eventually be lost in server wipes or with this glitch that's been around forever. You know, so I just don't think that they're quite the same thing. Meta says not comparable. Other free-to-plays, the most egregious item costs $60 to $100, battle pass, skin bundles, etc. Star Citizen is a game still in development, selling items worth a month's rent. They're not the same thing. Well, exactly. I think the sticker shock is a big piece of it, and I think part of the reason that games like WoW, like Call of Duty, are able to raise the money that they do is because of the volume of players. And this is part of the difficulty for Star Citizen devs right now, is they're like, okay, we have a small group of players, so we charge more and the whales will spend more and that will pay for development. What they want to do by going mainstream is they want to get more players. My point is, more players, you can also make a lot of money, but I believe that average ticket price needs to drop significantly. No more $800 ships. You might get away with doing like a $20, $30, $40, $50 ship. People would still throw a fit because it is a gameplay advantage you're selling. I know it's not pay to win, it's pay to excel. Okay, you're gonna seriously try to tell me it's not like affecting gameplay? It does. Okay, but I don't think they're willing to do that, because then, you know, the whales have already shown they're willing to buy an $800 ship, a $700 ship. There was one dude, I haven't seen him in stream in a while, but there was one dude in our community who was a big Star Citizen player, and he said that he saved up year round for when the ships go on like sale in November every year. And it was like a big moment for him. Like, he would save up year round to drop a bunch of cash on Star Citizen once a year. Like, that's how a lot of these guys handle it, you know? Yeah, the minnows won't cut it. Yeah. Well, especially because like the minnows cannot consume the same stuff the big whales are consuming. And the problem is, if you have the meal for the whales and you have the meal for the minnows, both offering, you know, a $10 ship here and then an $800 ship over there, not only is that just in terms of volume a crazy variety, but also it is like, I don't think it converts well. Because again, the people who are willing to spend $5 will be infuriated at the prospect of other players spending $800 and getting way bigger, cooler ships. And it is true. He's about to describe this next component here, so we'll skip to that. But there's a component of this that I think not a ton of people appreciate, which is the size and scale of the ship. But I think it's also not necessarily the most, like, I'm not sure if it matters, but I'll let it play out. So I don't have any of those extra bells and whistles, and I will say you can have fun. There is stuff to do in the game, but it is not on the same level as somebody who's running with like a Giga Javelin ship or something, or one of the other big ships like the 890 Jump, which is a massive like cruise ship yacht kind of thing. A couple years back, actually. This, to be clear, this is the C2. This is not the ship I'm describing. This is the C2, and it's also a bigger ship that I was able to use because another player found me in the server and sent me money in the game to buy this ship with, to try it on stream, which was nice of him. But this ship, I forget how much it is. It's maybe $100, $200, something like that. But it's this is also not a starter ship. You'd have to grind for this one or spend a good chunk of change on it. However, the 890 Jump is like a big cruise ship and everything. They did a video where I flew that ship around. No, wait, is it 600? You say H1 says 600? Is it seriously $600? Did somebody check that? That's crazy. It's like because a viewer was actually one of the hardcore players in Star Citizen and had a bunch of in-game currency to just give me. Just what I just described. It was cool. But that is where the disagreements lie, my friends. That is where the drama starts, is specifically with people who really have a problem with the exorbitant prices they charge for all sorts of ships. And they have a problem with it because it's not sustainable. And even some of the hardcore fan base that has engaged with the game on that level and spent amounts of money in the realm of like hundreds or even thousands of dollars, they have a problem with it because it is going to inevitably affect Star Citizen's capabilities of connecting with a more mainstream audience, which I think again is just the main point of the video, which is I don't think they're ever going to reach that mainstream appeal. I think they'll just continue milking the whales the way they have been, because I think in order to appeal to the mainstream audience, they have to do things very differently, and I don't think they're willing to do that. But what he says in response to this is, I don't think this is a fair statement. This is again in response to the ships, and I was describing how like you can do a lot of cool things with the big ships you can't do with the little ones. He says, I don't think this is a fair statement. I've been playing this game for some time, and fundamentally what differentiates subcapital / org gameplay from smaller ship gameplay is not the actual ship, but group size. And group size is mandatory for these larger ships. There is no point as a solo player, at least in the current iteration of the game, to own an Idris, which is a gigantic ship. I guess I should show that in case you didn't see the video, but the Idris is one of these massive ships. It can house 28 players. This is the ship I'm using in the video. Gives you an idea of the size and scale. They're just gigantic. They have like movie theaters within the ship, massive cargo holds. They're huge. And again, it's designed for 28 players. Okay. It's designed for a massive group. It's $400 for the C2 at the moment. Golly. I didn't realize I'm a high roller. That's crazy. $200 or $400 for that ship that I was using in that video. That's crazy. He says, I don't think that that's fair because you need a large group in order to run that ship and enjoy it. And so that's the deciding factor, not the money you're willing to spend, basically. As you can see here, there is no point in solo player. That's probably most soloable of the so-called subcapital ships, which are in the game. It's a pretty useless ship without a crew. Additionally, if you're doing org gameplay, it's org gameplay, regardless of Idris or no Idris. Now, I will say that there is more to the experience of using mid-sized ship than the experience in a starter, but that's also fundamentally the point. It's a starter ship that you're meant to outgrow. And I agree. The game needs starter ships to outgrow into mid-size or just different capabilities, and not necessarily just about scale, but you need something to move into, to progress towards. Absolutely agree. Again, this just goes back to the core thing, which is that if you have more cash, if your wallet is bigger, you get to do that faster or even immediately. If your wallet is thicker, you outgrow it immediately. And there are, as you can see, I will say there is more to the experience of using a mid-sized ship than the experience in a starter. So there's more to the experience if your wallet is bigger. And that's the problem. Because I think there is a way to build out Star Citizen where it's either cosmetic based or, I mean, clearly there's plenty of games that make hundreds of millions or billions of dollars without needing to rely on gameplay affecting things. I mean, even if you point to something like a Fortnite, where you're literally just talking about buying skins to dress like a banana and stuff. Those are gameplay agnostic. You know, it's just a matter of like the skin and the presentation of the player and the cosmetics. And that game makes billions of dollars. I think there is a version of Star Citizen that could monetize itself in that way, where it's not about the size of your wallet determining the amount of fun that you have right now. You know, I think there is a version to do it. 1833, he replies to as well. This is a follow-up on what I was saying here, which is, and yes, I'm glad you mentioned this because you're correct. I think this is a fundamental issue with pricing. It's more about optics and sustainability going forward than it is current gameplay or balance. Pretty clearly, I would say they've raised, like, by the end of this year, it will probably be a $200 million year. 200 million. Like they're getting, I mean, maybe not 200 million. They're raising well over $100 million a year with this unfinished game. So clearly the current player base is willing to spend money regardless of everything else going on. They're not worried about the optics. The problem is if they want to break into the mainstream, where I think the optics are pretty devastating. But I can at least hope that pointing out all of this above may help with said optics. Who knows though, inevitably, I doubt it will change that people see cool thing, see big price tag on cool thing and get bummed out. Yeah, well, it's a sense of jealousy, but it's also a sense of just, it creates two different tiers of players, or three different tiers. If there's like people willing to spend up to $500 versus players willing to spend 1,000 or 2,000 or 5,000. Like, again, I just, as a matter of principle, I don't like the idea that having a bigger wallet means you can do things that people with smaller wallets can't do. Like, I feel like there are certain things like gaming. I think gaming should be free of that personally. He goes on with this. This is not a new system. This is in response to 2440. This is in response to the persistent entity stuff. Impressive. It's called persistent entity streaming, and basically what they're trying, this is what I outlined in this video, or earlier in the video, or segment, I guess, which is leave the water bottle in the cave, come back, find it later, all of that stuff. He says, this is not a new system, just for the record, but again, I'm glad you're mentioning it because generally showing off a lot of tech Star Citizen has. This is a bit beyond the scope of the game itself, but the tech coming out of Star Citizen is a major reason why I personally have had no qualm funding the project. It's one of the few large budget games, possibly the only one, depending on how you define large budget, that's actually pushing tech and gaming in any sort of real direction. And it's far better, in my humble opinion, than feeding Activision more money for making the same game they did 10 years ago, but slightly worse. So they still have something to sell you next year. At this point, I really don't even mind if Star Citizen comes out bad. I've had my money's worth of fun and interesting experiences already, and they've paved the way for others to build out their dream projects. At this point, if Star Citizen is good, which I still think it will be, that's just icing on the cake. And frankly, this is the correct mindset to have if you're spending money in a game like this. Don't spend money on the promise of something in the future. Spend money on it if you like what it is currently. You know, if he's spent, you know, hundreds or thousands or whatever on the game and he feels like he's gotten his money out of it, great. That's ultimately what you would hope for. What irks me is when people, like, you know, are spending tons of money and they're like, well, it's because like eventually I'm going to get the ship, you know. Eventually I'm going to get the ship, which it was a thing. I remember seeing a video back in like 2014, 15 of a guy that worked at The Know. I've mentioned this guy before. Gus, he worked with Rooster Teeth. Yeah, this guy, Gus Sorolla. I remember seeing a clip of him talking about Star Citizen in like 2015 on the old channel The Know. Do you remember The Know? It was like old school. I mean, not that old school, but it was like a gaming news show that was baller. The Know. Yeah, look at that. And on this episode, they at one point called in Gus because they were talking about Star Citizen, and Gus had spent something like, you know, $800 or something on a ship, or $1,200 on a ship or something. And they were saying that, like, how did you spend that money? He's like, well, I bought the ship, and when it's done, it'll be cool. It was like specifically when it's done. It's not done. So I'm buying the promise of a ship, and I wonder what ship it was. I could go back and find that clip if it even still exists. Might have been like delisted because The Know doesn't really exist anymore. But I wonder if that ship ever came out or if he's still waiting for it. But that's the thing, is a lot of people bought the promise of ships and the promise of things way back in the day, and we're just hoping to get it out. And I hate that kind of thing. But if you spend money in the game, you got what you think is worth it. That's cool. The next thing, 2720, is about Blades, I believe. And so there was a whole uproar. They walked it back, and then apparently they just walked back. They're walking back of it in the last handful of months. And it now looks like they're probably going to keep doing that, or revamp it and rebrand it into something else. But specifically, this is in reference to the Blades. Basically, back in, I believe it was May, maybe April, there was a whole thing where they started to outline how they were going to charge for blades, which are augmentations for your ship, helps them to like go faster, have more maneuverability, whatever. So if you're willing to spend more money, your ship could literally do things that people who weren't spending money could do, which was something they said they would not do, and then they started to do it. Oops. So there was a bunch of uproar, and it's the video I made like 5-6 months ago on Star Citizen specifically, where it was like, you know, they've gone too far. They've overstepped their bounds, and even Star Citizen fans are getting outraged. and it was, I mean, they did walk it back. But when I was speaking to another creator, specifically a content creator who makes Star Citizen stuff exclusively, he had communicated to me that it looked like they were going to revamp that and bring it back, and Blades would be making a return. I will acknowledge this is something I could have been more precise about or had a direct source to quote or whatever. But basically it seems like they initially shut it down because of the outrage, and there's been rumblings and small comments made by them that have suggested that they will revamp the Blade system into something new that will allow them to potentially sell it again. But I agree, I could have been more precise there. I'm not sure where you're getting this from. As far as I'm aware, Blades are no longer purchasable for real money. And also, I'm also pretty sure that they're currently purchasable in in-game shops. All in all, I don't actually consider CIG to be particularly greedy, especially when compared to what is now essentially standard AAA business practice in the likes of EA, Activision, or whoever else. I will say, for one, it is funny saying that CIG doesn't strike you as greedy after raising $900 million and still not having the game out. Setting that aside, this also to me just seems like I don't think two wrongs make a right. Like, you earlier in the comment, you were describing how you don't like EA and Activision. You think it's better to spend money on something like Star Citizen as opposed to giving it to Activision, implying that what Activision is doing is bad and you don't like it. When you're saying, like, especially like it's not particularly greedy, especially when you compare it to EA or Activision. So like you're putting CIG in the same category as the company you don't like and say is like predatory and unreasonable. So like, which is it? You know, all I ask for is consistency. Like, if you're okay with the company being greedy and selling gameplay affecting stuff to milk money out of people, that's okay. If you're okay with that, okay. Clearly a lot of people are, because those games make tons of money. But let's not pretend that like CIG is special or exceptional when you then later compare them to EA and Activision in a later point. Like, let's be consistent. Either it seems to me like either they're all greedy or like stepping over the line, or all of them are totally fine. I don't think you can be super selective with it, especially because in earlier comments you're also suggesting, I find it slightly suspicious how long it's taken for this glitch to be fixed, suggesting that they are intentionally not fixing a bug because it allows them to milk their own fans for more money. You know, not great. Anyway, continuing on. At 2833, oh, this was in response to this. Whoops. Explanation I just did. I don't think the average gamer gives a crap. I don't think they give two craps what the explanation is, or, well, actually, you don't even need to do that. I don't think they care. All they're gonna notice is how you're selling $1,000 ship that is way cooler than the starter ship. And if this player only had more money to throw at the game, they could have that really cool, awesome ship. And that's just going to be the persistent problem within the persistent universe for a while. And personally, yeah, I think the optics is one of the big problems. LMAO, yes, pretty much, but I also think it's nonetheless an important aspect to mention if your intent is to be candid and truthful. Oh, that like you're able to grind for the ships, you don't have to spend real world money on it and all that. Yeah, it's true. It's just like, it reminds me of the old saying in politics where it's, if you're explaining, you're losing. And I think that that's also true in marketing in general. If you have to explain something to your customers, you've already lost. Like, you're already starting to spend time trying to justify and untangle a web and a knot when you could have just put it out with no knots, you know? And in this case, I think with Star Citizen, in order to explain why it's not as like, if you have to spend a lot of time explaining how your game is not a scam, you've already lost, okay? Because if that's where people are starting from, there's been some major misstep, you know? Because you look at something like, I don't know, The Witcher 3. Like, if somebody says, how is The Witcher 3 not a scam? People are like, what are you talking about? What do you even mean? Can you explain to me why Red Dead Redemption 2 is not a scam? Because it seems like one to me. People would be like, what the hell are you talking about? It wouldn't even make sense. But when people flip it and it's like, can you explain to me how the day before is not a scam? They'd have to do a good amount of explaining, because it really seems like a scam. You know, like it's really seems like a scam. Dude, I forgot. Oh, that whole saga was so fascinating, especially when it was revealed like this game seems too good to be true, but it also seems like a scam. And then they're like, yeah, well, our volunteer developers are working really hard. And you're like, sorry, what? They're like, yeah, all of our developers are volunteers. What? Dude, those are the days. That was crazy. Oh man. Anyway, continuing on. Last comment, last bit. 3345. Yes, probably did. Okay. 3345. Let's see what this was in response to. 3345. Okay, let's see. Oh, this was in response to specifically this guy, Jared, who is one of the directors on, or like head people working on Squadron 42, which is the single player variation and version of the game. When he said that he didn't know if they would hit the 2026 release date and then try to walk it back, wouldn't still be here. It sounds to me like they asked him to try and walk back that statement because people immediately started freaking out on their forums, as PC Gamer showcased in these comments, where they like literally started bringing this up. Yeah, this shit's not coming out, man. That's so effing dumb. It's not coming out in 2026. This is so embarrassing. The community immediately started turning on them when he came out and said this, and he tries to walk it back. But again, like, I just don't know. I don't know how else to read this statement. I don't know if we're going to make it immediately after referring to the 2026 release date. Like, it sounds to me like you're like, yeah, no, we might delay, which shouldn't be an option at this point. It's 14 years after you started raising money for this game is when you're expected to release it, and you're still like, maybe. It's crazy. But that's, we'll get around to it. He said, yes, they probably did specifically ask him to walk it back. And what's the best way to enhance? No, that's not gonna work. Here, I'm gonna turn off the chat real quick so we can see it. Yes, they probably did, but I also believe Jared when he says he's trying to be honest. Jared has always been very open, perhaps a bit too open for a project as large and controversial as Star Citizen, but nonetheless, I think a lot of people, myself included, have always appreciated it. Regardless, in Jared's defense, I think it's pretty fair to try and temper expectations given CIG's history, even if CIG is very confident that Squadron 42 will release in 2026. God knows that Star Citizen development could be cataloged as a history of the number of times CIG was very confident they could release something on time, and some new problem or need came up and it got delayed. I would say it's also it's not just a matter of problems, it's feature creep. And like I said in a previous video on Star Citizen, they have created a game and a monetization scheme that incentivizes them never finishing the game, which is my bigger frustration about it. Is that if they ever finish Star Citizen, it will mean that they are like done, you know, so they need to release it officially into probably console markets and Steam, and potentially maybe they'll just keep it on their own launcher, probably, but whatever. They'll need to release it. And when they hit 1.0, that changes the dynamic. That means any of these other problems with like bugs that conveniently push people to spend more money, that needs to be fixed. They've also, I've been told, have made conflicting statements on whether or not they're going to strip out the paid ships when the game is done. They framed it in multiple times in the past over the last 12, 13, 14 years as the ships are a fundraising tactic, basically, but when the final game comes out, you won't be able to buy them for real money. You'll have to grind for them in game. That's been a suggestion some people have made, but then other people have made other suggestions, like it still will be there, but who knows what it actually ends up being. My point is they have a reason where they're making $100 to $150 million a year without finishing the game. And the stuff they've said about what they want to do when they finish the game would probably mean they make significantly less money than that. So I think they have an incentive to never finish it and to just keep coming up with new features, new things to add. And it's that feature creep that's caused Star Citizen to be delayed pretty much indefinitely. And it's because like every time they start to settle in on something, there's one more thing to do. They need to rebuild this, they need to redo that. There's always something more. And as you've seen in this response comment, the people who are big fans of the game are willing to tolerate it and even at times make excuses for it. Continuing on, hell, you could probably catalog many large projects as such. The only difference being that things don't get cut in this game when they run out of time. That's kind of the definition of feature creep. Like most games are about build it, lock it down, build it, lock it down, build it, lock it down. And if we don't have time to lock it down and build it, it gets cut. Then you build it, lock it down. That's how game development works. But in the case of Star Citizen, what you have is build it, lock it down. Actually, never mind. We got to tweak that. Okay, lock it down. This thing, build it. Oh no, I broke both of them. Okay, we'll do. Okay, fix it. Okay, lock it down. Move those two over here. Okay, this one, build it. Oh no, this exploded. Like that's Star Citizen in a nutshell. And shocker, 14 years on, the game still isn't done and regularly has bugs. I probably needn't tell you this, but game development is not something that meshes well with deadlines. Okay. Especially when Chris Roberts is so hell-bent on making his perfect game. I understand what he's saying. It doesn't mesh well with deadlines. I get that. Yes, it is tough because every developer would say they want more time. And I forget the original artist who said it, but there was some artist who said that you know, no project, no painting, no piece of art is ever finished. It's merely abandoned. And I think that that's probably true with video games too. If you gave developers like unlimited time, I think that they would work on it indefinitely. And I think that that's part of what helps games, well, release for one, but I think that it's also just a fact of making some artistic endeavor or pursuing some artistic endeavor. So I understand what you're saying. But I think, again, like there is an incentive and there's been a system built up where Chris Roberts doesn't need to hit deadlines because there is always going to be another year of fundraising, another $100 to $150 million. And, you know, that's there's ultimately always the fallback, you know. It's kind of like that kid that graduated high school and like goes and can't hold down a job and his family's like, bro, you gotta do it. You gotta get a job. You gotta move out. But it's the parent dynamic where they always will have a room ready for him. They're always going to have, you know, they pay for his car, they pay for his cell phone, they pay for his insurance. So no matter what, he even gets an allowance every month. So even though what he probably needs is that kick in the pants to be like, nope, figure it out, go, do it. Instead, he's just constantly getting like the handout and the pat on the head. Well, at least you tried. And I feel like the massive amounts of money that they fundraise is that pat on the head and is that allowance that allows them to just keep delaying and canceling. And again, it's so insane to me, and we're used to it with Star Citizen at this point, but it is so crazy to me that you can have a game that's been in development for 14 years. They announce a release date in 2024. They say in 2026, Squadron 42 comes out. And we're about to hit 2026, and they say, yeah, we don't know if we're going to hit the date. We're going to try, but we don't know. I'm like, 2 years ago? 2 years ago, we weren't sure? 2 years ago? I thought that was the whole point of announcing the release date. You know, was that you were sure? FLFL, thank you for being here. Says, yes, I will say I do find it very strange how long Squadron has taken, Star Citizen less so, but Squadron 42 taking 14 some years is pretty insane. Well, and at this point, I think it's also kind of crazy where I'm like, I think part of it, frankly, is that they want to have them reinforce. I think they want to reinforce each other. So you play Squadron 42 and that feeds players into Star Citizen and they kind of feed each other. So you play some Star Citizens like Persistent Universe and you're like, oh, I want to play this, but like more structured and linear and narrative. Go play Squadron 42. And then those people funnel into the Persistent Universe and it just kind of feeds back on itself. I do think that can work. And I do think that is a decent idea. I don't know why it takes 14 years to do that. you know. And but I think that part of that is that they wanted systems and they wanted the tech to be coherent across the two projects. So you play Squadron 42 and you understand how to play the persistent universe, you know. That's at least the idea. But I mean, I will say, I think it will be genuinely amazing if in like late next year they are able to release Squadron 42, and imagine it reviews well. Like, put yourself in the position where we're in the Game Awards era for 2026, and Squadron 42 was like one of the top rated games and people ate it up and loved it. That would be genuinely crazy to see, and I think that could change the narrative. What would be really funny is if they release next to GTA 6. You're right. That would be freaking hilarious if they tried to go head to head with GTA 6. Frankly, I mean, I would guess the average Star Citizen fan is not playing GTA 6. Maybe they are. But if you're really into like hard sci-fi, I'm not sure if there's a lot of crossover. But either way, I mean, I do really appreciate the time FLFL for I want to say falafel when I see FLFL, but I'm sure that's probably not what you meant. Falafel. But I do appreciate taking the time to do this. Again, I'm very humbled that anybody would take this much time and effort to respond to one of my videos. It's very, very humbling. But I do just think, again, Star Citizen is such a fascinating game. Because it's got a lot of cool things with it, but then it's got other things that are just ridiculous. And I think the thing is that a lot of people are used to the ridiculousness if you are in the bubble, and if you've been in the universe and you've been in that community, everybody's used to it, but people on the outside are not. I also think that the interesting thing with Squadron 42, that I'll leave this on, they did a lot of motion capture. They did a lot of stuff for it. And I do think that this is currently like pretty solid, at least in terms of quality and everything. But again, like the standards are different. The persistent universe is different in terms of tolerance for bugs and jankiness and performance issues. It's very different than the tolerance among single player, like FPS players, who are the people that are going to be probably buying this game. I think like if they can polish this up, get it running really well optimized and stuff, that will do really well. But if it runs anything like the persistent universe, oh my God, it will go badly. Will go badly.
Shish_IM_Invisibles donated $5. 2072. New delay to Star Citizen announced with new feature allowing players to taste the space tofu proving more difficult than anticipated.
Chris Roberts, who's like a head in a jar at that point, is like, we just really thought this was a good idea and we're really excited for people to try it. The tofu tastes great, I'm told. We just can't get it working. Cheetah Duck, thank you for the 5. Theory, Squadron 42 will release on Steam to try and be more mainstream. I do think that would be a very good idea. I think if they try to do a like launcher exclusive launch, that's a bad idea. Just personally. Mainstream gamers, the idea, like even if the game looks cool, the idea that they need to download a dedicated launcher and do that to play the game, like unless it's a 10 out of 10 game, even then maybe not. Yeah, like you just got to remove the barrier to entry. Go on Steam. Every major publisher, Ubisoft, EA, everybody, they've gone crawling back to Steam. They got it. I mean, come on. This could go over really well. I mean, again, I think the production quality, everything looks really solid, but the performance has to be good, which I'm less confident in. Considering I know how they've run the persistent universe, but we'll see. I'm also interested in how big it is. Like if it ends up being, imagine after 14 years, if it's anything less than like 15 hours long, the memes will be glorious. It'll be glorious. FLFL, yeah, that's a big worry for me, seeing as they're doing major optimization improvements right now, around a year less from launch. Yeah, as long as they understand it. I mean, I think my concern is just that they are also in their own bubble, and just because I think the persistent universe players are willing to tolerate jank, that does not mean the mainstream audience will tolerate it at all. They will not. I'll tell you right now. Tell you right now. Even nowadays, when games are launching on PC and struggling to maintain like 60 FPS on most mainstream hardware, people mass downvote it, mass refund campaign. Doesn't go over well. The Persistent Universe regularly, I can't get running above like 20 frames a second, dude. Like, it's rough. They've said 40 hours-ish. That's a solid length for the campaign. That is a very good length for a campaign. That's a big campaign. 40 hours, I'm a happy camper. 15 after 14 years. I'm like, they couldn't even do an hour. They could. Okay. Luke had a stroke. Reset. 14 years and they could only hit like 12 hours? They couldn't even do an hour per year that they worked on it, even though that's not how game development works. The memes. The memes, man, the memes. He took my thing.